for the last several weeks talked about Tom. He owns the best auto and body shop in Doe Run, Texas. It's in East Texas, behind curtain, as people will say. You would not guess to look at Tom at first, but Tom really does appreciate history. To be more exact, he appreciates the story behind the history, the story behind the story. And when Tom comes to the Doe Run Presbyterian Church, he appreciates the story of that church, and he appreciates the stories of those that he sees in that church. Tom grew up in that church, in that little town. Now, he had a short prodigal period back in his 20s. They welcomed him back with open arms. It was an easy return. Now, he had a tough time at one chapter. He laid low, and there was another short season when he wasn't around that much. But pretty much he's in his early 60s now, and he is there pretty much every Sunday. And he appreciates the story of that church. He appreciates the stories of the people who are there. This is his home. And in this community, he has known people some all of his life. That's how it is in small town USA, wherever you are. He also knows the people who have come into the community, either married into the community, as you might say, or they have a job at a plant and has brought them there for a decade, for a lifetime. He knows the various people that are there and what has brought them there, because he sees a lot of the world from his auto and body shop. Tom follows Jesus, and he's interested to see how it works out with others. He loves the stories of Scripture. And when he hears a good story in Scripture, he keeps thinking to himself, that reminds me of something that happened in Doe Run, or one of the other surrounding communities. So let me tell you the story of Philippi, the church beginning in Philippi, the story connection with Doe Run in Texas, and what it means for us. Now, in our scripture lesson, we came this morning, we learned that the group, Paul and Silas, had been directed by the Lord not to go to the north coast of Turkey, that's what Bithynia is, but to go to Europe, Macedonia, and the first place you're going to reach when you go to Europe. Remember, Europe is number 3 in terms of getting the good news. It starts in Asia, it goes to Africa, Europe is number 3. And they've got the call to go there. And Philippi is one of those first major cities you're going to encounter going over there. So today we're looking at the church, kind of first bit of work being done there in Europe and Philippi and the people that are there. And the first person that Paul encounters is a woman named Lydia. Believe that she was Jewish. She is with a group of women. They are worshiping by the river on the Sabbath morning. Now, an interesting thing about her, she is originally from Thyatira. She is a dealer in purple goods. That's high-end merchandise. And Thyatira is a big center for dyeing. So she may have been actually an agent of a company there in Philippi. She's from an area called Lydia, so it may have been, well, she's from Lydia, you call her Lydia. Just like somebody from Texas moves somewhere else in the country, will be called Tex. Okay, that may have been it. But anyway, she's connected with a high-end industry there, and with the women she is gathered for prayer. Now this tells you something interesting about the city of Philippi. It took 10 men to form a synagogue. And the first place that Paul would go was always to a synagogue. Well, there is no synagogue. There's fewer than 10 men, Jewish men in Philippi, or at least 10 men that would be interested in forming a worshiping community. And so Lydia is with a group of women. They're going to worship anyway. They may not be in a building, but they are there to worship. And the Lord opens her heart to what is being shared as Paul speaks with her. She is a seeker. She is open open. Her big need, you could say, is intellectual. And she responds to the claims. And so she is there, your first convert in Europe. And then Paul and Silas come across a slave girl. Lydia is a woman of wealth, a businesswoman. This girl does not even own herself. She is, those who own her make money from her prophesying, giving fortunes. Now, you can debate whether is it really a demonic possession or she just thinks she's demonically possessed. Regardless, it was making money, okay? And she was being used. And she gets it about Paul. Listen to these men. They're telling the news of the Most High. And remember, the demons know exactly who Jesus is. Actually, kind of irony in the Gospels, the demons seem to get it more than the people there. But it's becoming a source of irritation, and so Paul says, basically, come out, demon. And she is free. Her need is psychological, and he has met that need. Well, she's no longer producing a revenue stream for her owners, and they get in real trouble, and they cause trouble in the classic way. They say, that guy, Paul and Silas, they're challenging things about Rome, the Roman way. And so Paul and Silas are punished. That's a very key phrase to say here in Philippi. They're not doing things the Roman way. Philippi is an outpost of Rome. It is a colony, which means those Romans, if you're a citizen of Philippi, you are a Roman citizen. It's a big deal for them. They're very sensitive to that subject. So those people know exactly what button to push. And so they are punished. Paul and Silas are beaten with rods. And then they are put into prison without a hearing. Now that night, Paul and Silas are choosing to celebrate. They are singing hymns. And there's an earthquake, and doors open, and the chains come off. And the jailer comes in and sees what has happened. And the jailer wants to kill himself. Because, see, if people get released, if prisoners escape, he gets it, okay? So let's just stitch in time, saves 9. I'll just do it my way, quick. And Paul's basically, no, we are here. No one is left. And the jailer says, what must I do to be saved? His need is moral, and he responds. Now, that morning, the following morning, the officials come to the jail for Paul and Silas to be released quietly and discreetly. Basically saying, you've learned your lesson, you got a beating, you spent a night in prison, now you'll get the message, go on to the next town. Now this is kind of funny actually here, I think, because this is when Paul plays the Roman card, and I just want to read it to you. It's in chapter 16. All of this is from chapter 16 if you want to get the full story. When the morning came, the magistrate sent the police saying, let these men go. And the jailer reported the message to Paul saying, the magistrate sent word to let you go, therefore come out now and go in peace. And Paul replied, they have beaten us in public, uncondemned, men who are Roman citizens, and have thrown us into prison. Now they're going to discharge us in secret? Certainly not. Let them come and take us out themselves. I kind of love it here. He's playing the Roman card because you're not supposed to be a Roman citizen, and you put me into prison without a hearing. And again, being in Philippi, the whole issue of being a Roman citizen is extremely important. And if the word ever got out to the Roman citizens in that town that this had happened to fellow Roman citizens, those police, those magistrates are in big trouble. And so they come and they apologize to them. And they took them out and asked them to leave the city. I'm sure they asked very nicely too, like don't tell anybody. But after leaving prison, Paul and Silas go to Lydia's house, where they have seen and encouraged the brothers and sisters, and then they departed. We have here in Philippi the beginnings of the church. Lydia, the businesswoman, we presume Jewish, the Gentile slave girl, probably from that area, or maybe over Western Turkey. The Roman official, whether he is Roman or not, we do not know, but someone who was part of the power structure, but middle class, lower middle class in terms of his rank. A Jewish man at that time would, particularly a Pharisee, would say in the morning, part of his morning prayers is, "Oh God, I thank you that I'm not a woman, that I'm not a Gentile, and I'm not a slave." And yet those are the three people that start the church in Philippi. It is interesting to see here in Philippi, some of the rules are broken. And these three begin the church. Jesus came to seek and save the lost. And this led Jesus to reach out to Zacchaeus. People did not like him no matter how much money he had. He could not buy respectability. This led Jesus to call Paul and to call Cornelius. It led Jesus to call Barnabas. And this act inspired Barnabas to reach out to Paul and to give a second chance to Mark. Jesus came to seek and save the lost, and that means the lost even of Durham, Texas. Tom heard the story of Philippi taught in a Sunday school class at the Durham Presbyterian Church. And immediately he thought of the people that he knows from his church and in his community, the different churches. He thought about Mrs. Gates and Mrs. Pitt, the Swain sisters, also known as the Night and Day sisters. See, Mrs. Gates, she can be abrupt, sharp-tongued. And if you want to be a friend, you cannot get easily offended. There's just no filter. However, she can plan a project ahead of schedule, under budget, over target, and she believes in the causes that she supports, and she has done a lot of good. Then you've got her sister, Mrs. Pitt. Now she's a bit flighty with details, and you wonder how her children ever got fed. You know what it took. Her father used to say, bless her heart, she couldn't plan a 2-car funeral. However, she is a person who is a good listener. In fact, she's probably one of the best listeners in town. She has good insights, and once she is behind a cause or a person, she's downright tenacious. In fact, it's been said, if I had a problem, I want Mrs. Gates to fix it. And then once it's fixed, I want to be with Mrs. Pitts to help figure out what to do next. And Jesus has reached out and called both of them. And then you've got Mr. Clay the baker. Now he's respectable and respected in the community. Now many years ago he had a bout with a bottle, and not everybody knows that because he just recently got his 35-year chip. Now he can be a little uppity at times, quite frankly, and full of himself, if the truth be told. However, he has quietly helped more than one recovering alcoholic put his or her life back together. And in fact, Tom, our body shop and auto shop owner, Mr. Clay, have a hotline. Because you know, Tom's all about giving somebody a break or a second chance. Sometimes he's the one you go to for a third chance because third time is always a charm with Tom.